Hey guys, and welcome back to this 13th tutorial MATLAB. Well, this time we're going to discuss a couple of things that I didn't have time to cover in the previous tutorial regarding cells. So let's open up our original function that we created in the previous tutorial. And here again we have our cell blocks. So let's just go ahead and run one of these cell blocks. And to do that, this time we're going to use one of the buttons given to us in this cell block tools bar. And if it's not currently being displayed, we can again go back up to the top, and under desktop we select toolbars and just make sure that our editor cell mode is enabled. Okay, well, let's go ahead and run this cell block here, b equals 2. And as you can see again, it outputs the value of b equals 2, and that's because it executed all the statements within this particular cell block, independently from the rest of our code. Now, what we have in the toolbar is the option to add a value or subtract a value from a particular variable and rerun that cell block. It's a way for us to run that cell block many times quickly and see what the result would be for a different value for a particular variable. So let's go ahead and see what this does. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this value 2, which is being set equal to b, and if we run this or press this button here, add, it's going to add the value within this text box to the variable and run the cell block. So if we run this, you see that the value has been increased from 2 to 3, and we look over here at our command window, b equals 3. It outputs the value of 3. And we can run this many times really quickly as soon as I get that button there. And as you can see, it executed the statements within that block every time we added a value. We can also subtract values as well. So, still highlighted, we have b equals 9 right now. So if we press this minus button here, it'll execute the cell block subtracting the value within the text box. We can also multiply and divide particular variables by a given number. In this case we have 1.1, but let's go ahead and change this to, I don't know, let's change it to 2. So right now b is equal to 2 again. And if we press this button, multiply, it's going to execute the cell block and multiply 2 by 2. So our output this time is 4. And again, we can press this many times and keep executing that cell block independently. We can also divide by 2 and see what the output or the corresponding output would be. So this menu is pretty handy. It also allows you to add breaks for cells as well. It's another way of creating cell blocks. But one last thing I'd like to mention before leaving the topic of cells is when you independently execute a portion of your code through the use of cells, you need to make sure that that portion of your code is not utilizing any variables that haven't been declared or initialized. So let's say that in the first cell block we had a variable and we called it var1, for example, and it had a value of 10. But we wanted to execute a different cell block and see what the result of that cell block was. If that cell block happened to utilize that variable, MATLAB is going to give us an error because this variable hasn't been created yet. So if we try running this cell block, as you can see, we have an undefined function or variable error listed for var1. Well, this pretty much concludes what I was going to discuss regarding cells. If I happen to discover anything else in here under the pull-down menu for cell blocks, I'll include them in a future tutorial. But until then, I guess this is pretty handy. It's another means for evaluating your code and seeing if it's doing what you in fact want it to do. Until the next tutorial, well, adios.